Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we are looking at some, really cool ideas and aspects of the Division 2 that we have right now. And we're just having this discussion because it makes a lot of sense to talk about it now that a lot of people have, somewhat abandoned the Division 2 and have moved on to other games. Now, I'm not going anywhere. I like this game. I want to see it do well, but I'm not playing. I'm playing other games myself, but I'm keeping an eye on watching, stuff around the community and just making sure I'm up to date. And that's because, there's nothing to do. Like, if you ask me, so, aren't you going to play the Division today? I'm like, what are we going to play? I got everything except the Sawyer knee pads, but hey, it's not changing anything for me. I've been fortunate enough to get, all the drops and all that stuff. Now, the reason I say that is because the developers have spent so much time in this game actually, in quote, balancing stuff. Now, I'm not saying that everything was perfect when the game was released, and we're in TU6, title update 6. Are we on TU6 or TU7? I can't remember, 6 or 7. It's just so many TUs, it's ridiculous. But in those TUs, we have not necessarily gotten a lot of, activities and contents to do, because I feel like these balance updates, they're probably as a result of, the developers not being able to see every possible scenario and then eventually come to see that, oh, crap, what we just released is actually a broken mess. That's one thing you can say. And then another is, they've spent a lot of time as well, just making these balance patches that they haven't necessarily been able to put out content. So the balancing is actually hurting the content's release schedule. It is the truth. They're like, well, we want to make sure that before, and I think that's what they want to do. They want to bring out TU6, and they postponed that raid, I think, because they wanted to kind of like prep the balance meta for a new raid or new content to come. And so what I want to do now is I want to kind of compare, this scenario to, say, maybe Destiny 2. Now, when I got into Destiny 2 just a little bit, one of the things that really got me about that game was I felt overwhelmed. There was so much to do. So much to do. There is all kinds of fun stuff. There is Crucible PvP for people who want to, go after one another. And then there's the Gambit. So I'm really appreciative of, my dude who took me into the Gambit. I had two gentlemen here in the game, I think 2 or 3. They took me into the Gambit and they say, you need to see this. And I thought this was the most, innovative thing that I've seen in an RPG looter shooter in my life and put into implementation. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute of it because I was not forced to play PvP, but I could also somewhat PvP against my opponent and be competitive. And that's what really made that game mode for me. And then there are all kinds of other things to do. There are events, there are quests, there are bounties. In fact, I was picking up this stuff and I was like, I can't even keep up. Like, I feel flooded and I feel overwhelmed. And that is actually a good thing. Because if you spend your time actually making content, your player base will have content to play. And I think Massive just somehow shifted so much content away that the game got to a point where a lot of people are not playing because they have nothing to play in the game. And this brings me to the question, so of what benefits do nerfs and buffs actually play in the game as a means of providing content? And I'm leading up to the fact that we're probably going to be seeing much more meta changes in our gear and our brand set in the future. Because from the way we've seen the Division game the way we've seen the Division game get handled, the developers have used changing metas to just keep people playing a lot of times. Because if they find like one brand set or one item or a few items are giving issues, they usually will go in and go gung-ho and do an overall overhaul, or they'll take a nuclear option and make a specific set of sweet spot items irrelevant. These are nerfs, and they'll do it in a very heavy-handed way that makes people usually, get upset. But I think to them, they've always thought, they're probably going to keep playing, they'll be fine, they'll adjust, they'll do this. But in actuality, that's a different mindset. And people would only continue playing if they had nothing else to play that felt rewarding. So guess what a lot of Division players did once Massive started nerfing things like the Eagle Bear and all that? They went straight to Destiny 2. I know somebody who farmed every single piece of brand sets to specifically fit what he wanted to build. And then eventually, after many, many plays, got their Eagle Bearer. And in no time, they announced that they were going to be doing a huge nerf for this weapon. And the person just dropped the Division 2 and just moved on to Destiny 2. And they've not turned back since then. They have not even given the Division. I doubt that they even know what that game means anymore. And I guarantee you that there are a lot of people who have done that. And this is not a way to actually advance the game. Instead, what I think advances the game is in moving to developing and designing content. That is exactly what I feel actually works. Because if you see the way the way Bungie actually does their PvP, from what I've learned, from what I was able to learn in my time in, learning Destiny and taking notes, there are specific things that you can use in PvP that you can actually work towards getting for PvP. But in the Division 2, everything is generic and spread across the board. And so that doesn't necessarily allow for the balance that needs to be happening in in isolation. So if you want to maybe tweak, say that, clutch was a problem in PvP. And so what happened was a tweak to clutch affected PvE, if you understand what I mean. And so that's the kind of way that it goes back and forth. And the game never seems to be able to achieve, any kind or any semblance of, things being in a state of, of zen. And the developers are always running and actually picking up the pieces of broken items because they have not necessarily structured, gear items and weapons and all those things to curtail the two different aspects of this game and actually make it as such. And what does this do? This eats into the time that they could be using to develop some really good and engaging content. And then they're bringing us, changes and balance patches more than anything else. I mean, TU1, TU2, TU3, 4, 5, 6, and when we still are saying that all the missions have been, completed, we've done the raid and all that stuff, content and events should be coming into the Division 2 very often. And that it goes back to say, what happened to all the good things that happened in the Division 1? I feel like global events should have just translated into the Division 2 automatically. It should just been a thing from day one. Like once you get to endgame, ladies and gentlemen, you now go into the place where by World Tier 5 we'll be rotating global events to come into the Division 2. Because global events right now are still rotating in the Division 1 right now. They still have a rotation schedule. Those kinds of things kept players playing. Those kind of things kept players actually doing stuff. So in the times where people can't go play a raid, they can at least farm global events to try to maybe get things that were in the raid, maybe for a smaller chance. And people have things that they can be doing and things they can be playing. The time that they used to be, trying to, put out fires of so-called broken gear, they could use that to design more exotics and design more really cool gear and items that are worth farming. And then the way they've implemented some of the exotics and some of the, the way you build and where you go do these specific activities and all that, very clever way. The holster, the Dodge City holster, in my opinion, is one of the best, iterations on how you can actually put together an exotic, because it's not like the Nemesis where you had to kind of wait for those rotations. It's just, it's a thing where you can actually, you have to just kind of time it and wait for the time of the day. And if you missed out, that was on you. That was a very, very smart way to do that. And they could do more things like that. But because I think, and this is my opinion, that they're so used to using changes as means of content, it seems like real content, gets to lack over time. And that continues to take away the player base and move them to Destiny, where they have so much to do, so much to farm. And hence, the game that we like begins to just, go into decay if nobody, is paying attention. So I hope that the developers have something in mind for their 2020 release schedule. I would love for there to be enough content for everybody to be playing. I want to play the Division 2. I don't want to have to jump to another game to find contents to play. This is supposed to be an ongoing game that's receiving ongoing support. So the things that players want, nowadays, are the things that I feel like they need to be taking care of and paying attention to. PvP is also a very, very challenging aspect to balance, but if they had learned anything from the Division, 1, they should have done PvP in a way where players just go in there with, all with specified classes and, PvP. If you were gonna go PvP, if you're going into the dark zone, you go with a specified, class of gear and whatever to be able to help you in there. Just design an entire area where you can go farm, but, you're going to use gear that we give you so that way everybody knows that they're going in on playing field, but at the same time, the core of the dark zone where you can still jump somebody or where you can still steal somebody's loot. Those were the core ideologies of the dark zone could still be implemented. But I'm not going to talk much about PvP because, to me, it's mostly about perception. I mean, I play the dark zone a lot, but I don't PvP. But at the same time, I mean, from seeing the way things have gone, I feel like they could have done some really more creative things to serve the PvP community. And I think that was just from a lot of feedback that was ignored. Instead, they went and changed systems, changed a lot of things that the PvP community just, was not necessarily needing. And I guess that's just as a result of them not picking up from where they stopped in the Division 1 and changing their entire vision for a community that was inexistent. But that's all I have for today. I just wanted to make sure that I put this on record, and hopefully we can see some change in the Division 2 come the future. Anyways, that's it. And I guess I'll see you in my next video.